and I felt like the first, bigger shock and paranoia has settled a little, so I wanted to share what happened with me. I will begin my story time with a little explanation about how my apartment building is designed, as that information is quite essential to understanding the story. If it matters anyhow, I am female, 21, so I live in a medium-sized town nearby, at the center area, but still in a somewhat quiet neighborhood. My building basically has elders and family people living there, but hence the location, the main doors are always locked, so you either need to have a key or have someone buzz you in order to get inside the building. Once you enter the building, there's obviously the staircase. Well, at each mid-floor, there are these small balconies. I don't really understand why though, as each apartment has its own balcony too. I live on the 3rd floor and you can see directly into my bedroom from the balcony, which is located on the 2.5 floor. I will explain one more thing before beginning with the juicy stuff itself. My building is also located behind a big school building, so I usually don't close my curtains as there is nothing but a big empty parking lot in front of the building at night. A lot of people wouldn't be wandering around it anyway. Now let's get into the actual experience. It was the first night between Wednesday and Thursday, and I didn't have work the next day, so I was just spending some quality time, aka watching YouTube from my tablet. I hear some noise coming from the hallway, kind of heavy footsteps and the sound of someone occasionally bumping into the handrail, as if drunk or just tired. But that's nothing very unusual, as I live in a building with other people living in it, so you do hear noise even at night. The part where it gets weird is when I heard the footsteps end on my floor. The bedroom wall and the side of my bed, where my head is located against the wall where the staircase is, on the other side of, so it was clear that the person had stopped. I don't hear any doors opening, nor any footsteps anymore, just silence. I found it kind of disturbing that someone was just standing in the hallway in the middle of the night. After a while of silence, I heard the footsteps again, but this time more quiet and gentle, starting to walk back down the stairs. I just thought that maybe someone was drunk and entered the wrong staircase or something. Not a big deal. They're gone now. I continued my YouTube marathon for a while before getting kind of sleepy. One thing I enjoy before going to bed is looking out of my window. There's one main road located at the end of a big parking lot, so sometimes I just watch cars passing by before going to sleep. So I put on some music with quiet volume, apartment buildings, bleh, and began my staring session. During the second song, I suddenly noticed a small source of light and some movement in the down left corner of my eyes. I lowered my gaze and just froze. There was a man on the small balcony staring at me for who knows how long, in my bedroom in just my t-shirt and underwear. After what felt like at least a few minutes of being frozen in shock, probably was more like 5 seconds, I quickly closed the blinds and went out to check that both my apartment doors were properly closed and locked. Luckily they were. After a while of shivering in my bed, I came to the realization that the man staring at me was most likely the source of the footsteps. He perhaps had heard the sound of someone being awake in my apartment, and listened to that for a while. Then noticed the balcony and decided to check it out, and noticed you can see into windows from there. I am not completely sure, but I think he could possibly have seen me before I even went to look outside from the window, as I had a small light on in my room, and it was relatively dark outside, but I had no curtains on. If he didn't see me before though, He for sure as hell did while I was staring out the window. At that point, feeling the discomfort of being creeped at without knowing, my thought process was stopped by the sound of someone trying to open my door. Luckily, my door is quite secure, so I don't think this person could get it open. But then I heard the small letterbox being opened as slowly and quietly as possible. I still feel the hair in the back of my neck standing up while typing this out. I have 2 doors, thank God, so he couldn't see directly into my apartment. But I could hear him. He was breathing sort of heavy, constantly swallowing as if he was either very nervous or just somehow disturbed. Creeping on people? Disturbed? No way. I think I held my breath and changed into a motionless wax figure until he closed the letterbox and, for some reason, sprinted down the stairs, making a lot of noise again this time. I was so fixated on each sound, so I heard the sound of the hallway door being opened, and I assumed he ran out. I don't dare look out of the window to check, as I was still feeling watched. Nothing more happened that night anymore, but I was certain of getting no sleep for the rest of the night. I called up my mom and explained what happened. She had work the next day, so I didn't want to disturb her sleep more by asking her to come sleep here or pick me up. So we just agreed we'd keep the phone line open through Viber throughout the night. I drank 2 energy drinks, not such a great idea when your pulse rate is already sky high, and stayed up until it was light outside and normal people were awake. I fell asleep, unwillingly. I didn't see the man anymore, at least up until this very moment as I'm typing this, and I hope to never see him again. But what did happen, and has made me even more paranoid, is this. The next time I had work after the incident was on a Monday morning. I hadn't really been sleeping well lately and had an early morning. I was already somewhat all over the place, but this just scarred me for life. As I explained before, I have 2 doors in my apartment. Well, I was leaving for work and opened the inner one, and for my damn surprise, I saw the outer door slightly cracked open. I felt like throwing up and just running into my mom's arms like a little girl, just to go somewhere safe, but instead I had to go to work. The rest of the day I kept looking over my shoulder, constantly having this weird feeling that someone will come to get me, like someone was watching me, etc. Just not a good state of mind. I hadn't heard anything at night, so I'm assuming I was just exhausted from not sleeping properly. I'm so thankful for having 2 doors because however he managed to ever so quietly open that outer door, he could have entered the apartment where I was basically passed out and done anything to me. I reported these 2 incidents to the building's management, and together we filed a police report. They promised to have someone guard the premises a while until the situation settles down. I'm sleeping still at my mother's house and hoping that once I return home, I'll be safe and one day be able to get rid of the paranoia. I will not be keeping my curtains open nor checking out the window at night for a while. 2. This is a true story about one of the most terrifying experiences I have ever had in my life. It was especially disturbing considering my age at the time of this encounter, with someone who was likely a pedophile with bad intentions. I am from Canada, and generally feel very safe where I live. However, I live less than 15 minutes away from the home of two of the most notorious serial killers in Canadian history, Robert Pickton and Clifford Olson. Knowing that, it's safe to say that there is a history of crime where I live. Just because those two horrible people were put in jail long before this happened, doesn't mean evil is non-existent, as I learned. So, here is how it all happened. After leaving my friend's house in the wintertime around 10 o'clock at night, I slowly made my way home, walking through the dark, empty streets of our peaceful neighborhood. Her parents weren't very responsible, and were too drunk to drive me home, but to be honest, I wanted to walk, because I didn't want to go home right away. My parents trusted me. I never would have thought that I could be in danger. I just turned 11 and was wearing little pink sneakers, my brother's hoodie, and my blonde hair in braids. I walked calmly and proudly, dragging along my brother's scooter beside me. I told myself there wasn't anything to be afraid of. I didn't look it, but I was a pretty fearless little girl. I thought that I was tough back then, and nothing would sound cooler to my friends than me telling them I walked home all by myself at night. Since I wasn't in any rush to get home, and be told by my mother to go to bed, I paused and admired the silence. I took a deep breath, inhaling the frigid air, exhaling, and creating fog with my breath. After a while, I picked up the pace and continued towards my street. Through the fog, I could almost see where I had to turn onto my street. The peaceful moment was suddenly disturbed by the sound of a pickup truck driving past me, definitely going above the speed limit. About a minute later, I heard a slow-moving vehicle's engine behind me, but I didn't think anything of it at first, until I turned around. Strangely, this is the same red pickup truck that drove past me a minute ago. It would have had to gone all the way around the block to end up behind me again so quickly. Uncomfortably, I gripped my brother's scooter tightly and put one of my feet onto it as I dragged the other. I didn't want to draw any attention to myself, so I didn't get on it right away. I felt the truck getting closer, approaching me from behind. Then my stomach began to hurt and I got chills. I had this intense gut feeling that I needed to get away from this man who was lurking behind me in his truck as fast as possible. I didn't look behind me again. I jumped on the scooter and raced onto my street, my feet slapping the ground as I launched myself. As the wheels slipped a little bit on the frosty pavement while I rode off, I panicked, screaming a little bit every time the scooter wobbled. I picked up quite a bit of speed, my eyes watering from the freezing cold wind as it blew furiously in my face. My stomach lurched when I heard the engine roar. He stepped on the gas and sped towards me. The fear that he was following me had now been confirmed. Tears fell from my eyes as I flew down the street like a bullet. Luckily, I could now see my house. Slightly relieved, I prepared to jump off and sprint inside. I looked over to see him right beside me, staring. It was difficult to see what he looked like, other than that he had a beard and was wearing a hat. But I'll never forget his eyes. He stared at me in the most horrifying way. I had to turn around. I couldn't look at him. It was unbearable. Now at my front walkway, I slammed on the brakes, skidding on the icy road as I was thrown off the scooter. I frantically tossed it into my front yard and bolted. I let out a gigantic scream as I sprinted up to my front door. Thankfully, it was unlocked, so I ran inside, slamming the door behind me and locking it immediately. Screaming for my parents, I ran down to them so fast that I practically fell down the stairs. I tried to tell them everything that happened, but I was breathing so heavily they could barely understand me. Finally, they figured out what happened and went upstairs with me. When we looked out the window, the red pickup truck was still in front of my house. My parents angrily went outside to confront the driver, but as soon as he saw them, he sped off even faster than he did when he was chasing me. I wondered why he was still there 3 minutes later. Was he waiting for me to come back? Because why would I? Was he writing down my address? I don't know. And I probably don't want to know. Someone who is messed up enough to follow a screaming and obviously uncomfortable 11-year-old girl home clearly wasn't there to check if I got home safe. I'm happy to say that I never saw the creepy red pickup truck ever again. But this terrifying encounter sure kept me awake at night, wondering what would have happened if I wasn't fast enough. My bedroom window faced the street where I nearly fell off my scooter, trying to get away from him. I always worried that one day he would come back and try to get inside my room. So to the twisted, horrible man, he chased me in his car, following me to my house. Let's not meet. 3. A couple of years ago, I moved to a quiet, domestic town just outside of a major US city. Based on the population, middle-aged parents with kids, and boring hobbies, I'd always thought of it as a pretty safe place to live. I am an unemployed night owl, so I like to walk and ride my bike during the quiet late hours and sleep into the afternoon. But ever since I met the man in the red truck, I don't go out after dark. I was taking a stroll a couple of months ago when I saw just the creamiest, biggest moon in the sky. I love the moon, and I love sharing the things I love, so I dashed inside to drag my roommate Dan and my friend Alexis out to see it. They stay up late too, but it was past 4 a.m., so we were all damn tired. They enjoyed the full moon, and we agreed it was a nice capstone for a night well wasted. We were half a block from my apartment when a pickup truck rolled up to the curb just over my left shoulder. The street was half lit and empty but for us. "Hey ladies, you're out late." The voice I heard wasn't flirty or playful. It was dead serious. Almost a little hateful, I thought. As the red truck's cab slided into my periphery, I saw the guy's head leaning out the window, massive and stubbled, and half whitened by the street lamp. The driver's face on the far side lit up orange as he dragged on his cigarette. Then it went dark. I thought I could see his teeth gleam like he was just barely smiling, but I wasn't sure. I'm a transgender woman. At that time, men had just started hitting on me occasionally, but I already had the smiling, light-hearted rejection routine down pat. "Yep, just about to go to bed, actually. We're all pretty tired," I said, forcing a laugh. The man retracted his boulder of a head into the truck and said from the dark, "Come over here. I can't hear you." I repeated myself more loudly and chuckled again, a little frailer now. My friends were silent. "Just a couple of feet closer. That's all. Don't be rude." He said it really slow, as though he were exerting all his effort on trying to seem casual. It was at this moment that I became very frightened, because this was creepy as fuck, yes, but also because these men hadn't given a single glance to Dan. Dan, for context, is an aesthetic bodybuilder. He's big and hairy, with starkly toned arms, long black hair, and a Neanderthal's beard. From behind at night, he could conceivably be mistaken for a woman. But from the front, he's not the sort of guy people mess with. So from the man's hateful tone and the way he wanted me closer, my lizard brain surmised something. These men want to hurt us or take us with them, or both. From the fact that they hadn't even sized up my massive roommate in preparation for a struggle, I surmised something else. These men are armed. Heart fleeing my body, I went into escape mode. I said something, I don't even remember what, to brush off the man's request while maintaining a semblance of harmless ditziness. I took a step back, gave Alexis and Dan the glare of death, and started walking slowly. Immediately, the man's tone was a saccharine plaint. Come on. Hey, do you guys know where we can get some booze this late? Nah, sorry man. Well, do you guys like weed? We got some joints in the car if you want. Come on. Come over to the window. Nah, we all stopped smoking years ago, but thanks. As we passed the neighbor's hedge and the apartment complex slid into view, I realized we had three options. None of them good. One, we could run to the door and hope they didn't pull out guns, and then live in constant fear because they'll know exactly where we live. Two, we could turn down the side street, hope they give up, and then use the apartment's secluded back entrance, the risks of which are obvious. If they didn't give up, they'd have us off the main road in the dark. Or three, we could walk onto the next block, avoid them finding out where we live, and then lose our rush inside and lock the door contingency. I chose option 2 completely at random. As we neared the street corner, I heard the driver's voice, desperate and impossibly deep. Do you like donuts? There's a Dunkin' Donuts around the corner. We'll buy you some, just hop in. It'll only take 5 minutes. We kept walking. The truck lurched forward to catch up, and then halted. They rolled up the windows, and I heard them arguing inside as we rounded the corner onto the secluded side street. The truck lurched again, and then screeched to a stop. Lurched, then stopped. I heard a muffled shout, and then they were quiet. As we approached the back of the complex, I could hear the engine humming behind me. If we turned right, they would know where we live. If we kept walking, we would lose our chance at safety. We slowed our pace to a crawl. Dan and Alexis, who hadn't said a word, were looking at me bug-eyed and sweating. And then tires screeched and the truck was gone. We sprinted into the parking lot and unlocked the glass door, all of us shaking. Then the foyer door. Then my unit. We collapsed in the dark. I hissed at Dan as he instinctively moved to flip the lights on. We shut the blinds and called the cops. We told them what happened, gave them descriptions. They got annoyed when we didn't want to give them our address for an immediate in-person interview. We were all really shaken, and cops are terrifying, so we hung up. The three of us haven't talked about it since. I shut the blinds now, and I scold Dan when he leaves his window unlocked. I crouch around my room sometimes, leering at that tree outside my window, with the vodka nips in its upper limbs. I walk in the daytime now, and I miss the moon.